everyone, welcome to our elective 7 session on legal research on the NextGen bar exam. My name is Professor Ashley Arrington, and I'm excited to talk to you today about this forthcoming significant change in the legal profession and how it will impact you as a newly licensed attorney. So let's get started. I want to first point you to the NextGen bar exam website, which will be helpful for you to come back to as you seek to learn more about this NextGen bar exam. So let's take a quick look at that. Okay, so here we are, having followed that link. We're looking at the NextGen bar exam website. So just a brief overview of this. We've got several tabs. We're on our home tab. We can look at our About drop-down. So you'll see there's a lot of different types of documentation that are related to the NextGen bar, that are related to really the development of the NextGen bar exam, the reasons for its development. So in 2019, the NCBE administered a practice survey, and that was administered among legal professionals who were supervising newly licensed attorneys. So they asked about the skills exhibited by those newly licensed lawyers and how we could revise the bar exam to help ensure that newly licensed attorneys have the practical skills that they need. So again, if you move through some of these links here, you will find a number of different pieces of documentation. We've got a whole host of reports here. There's plenty to explore if you are wanting to gain more information about the NextGen bar. I'll also point you to the FAQs, so there's that. We've also got sample questions, so we'll talk about some of those, and then I'll ask you to look at some of those for your final assessment. Latest news, so if we click here, we will see just most recent developments. So you can see most recently, beginning of this month, Indiana adopted the NextGen bar. Recently we had Georgia, Florida, right? And then if you keep going, we see a number of other states: Oklahoma, Illinois, Washington, Tennessee, Colorado, and Minnesota. And these are all this year, right? So these states have announced this year that they plan to administer the NextGen bar. We'll talk about that in a moment, the number of states that have signed on thus far. But there's a tab for latest news, right? You can find out what's going on. We've got events. Subscribe if you want to keep up with NextGen bar exam updates. You can submit your email address, and they will email you with any updates. Contact information, you can search the website. And then on the home page, which we've seen already, there's a number of links for all of the things that we've talked about, right? Subscribe, latest news, timeline for the exam, etc. So lots of information to explore. You'll also see we've got a list of what we'll see on the bar exam, right? So we've got a list of foundational concepts and principles, which if you note, these are doctrinal areas, right? These are areas that you studied in 1L and beyond that as well, but these are those foundational doctrinal areas. And then we'll talk about foundational skills as well. So this is new to the bar exam, and this is a major shift from what the bar exam looks like at present. Latest news, and then more information. So again, plenty to explore there, and I encourage you to come back to the site and see what types of information you can find. Like I said, there are plenty of reports and all types of other information that are looking at different phases of this development and the evolution of the NextGen bar, and looking forward to what that will look like. So we just saw a list of some of those states that have signed on to administer the NextGen bar exam. Here is a map of the states that have signed on thus far, so you can see they're highlighted in blue. So far, we've got 21 states that have signed on. So this is significant, right? You'll see Texas is not highlighted in blue, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. But we're seeing states continually signing up to shift their bar exam from the UBE to the NextGen bar exam. And we'll continue to see that moving forward. So what about Texas? Texas recently, or the Supreme Court of Texas recently published an order regarding the NextGen bar exam within the state of Texas. And so you can see at top here of the order that they're recommending adoption of the NextGen bar exam. And then at left you see some later language from that same order telling us that the court anticipates that this change will take effect beginning with the July 2028 exam administration. And so we've got a few years before that happens, right? But this does mean that following this year, everyone, all of the law classes behind you will be taking this new NextGen bar exam. So why does that matter? It matters because, one, you should be keeping up with what is happening in the legal profession and how this licensure process is changing, right? But secondly, and more importantly, you want to make sure that you have these skills that these newer graduates right behind you will be tested on, right? So they're going to be tested on these things. This practical skills piece is completely new, but they'll be tested on them for the first time. And you want to make sure that you have those foundational skills and you can illustrate that you have them to the same extent or level, right? You want to make sure that you're on the same page to ensure the best representation for your clients and making sure that you're doing the best for your firm as well, right? But we want to make sure that you have an understanding of these things despite whether you're taking the UBE or the NextGen bar exam. And in a little bit, we will take a look at, I forgot what I was going to say, but whatever it is, we will come to it shortly. Okay, so what are we going to see on the exam? So we saw this mentioned on the NextGen bar exam website. The doctrinal areas are being referred to as foundational concepts and principles. So you can see at right, we've got civ pro, contract, evidence, torts, business, associations, con law, criminal law, real property, and those will be administered for the states that have signed up beginning in July 2026. So that'll be the first administration of the exam among some states, right, the early adopters, but not all states. And then July 2028, they'll add family law. So for Texas, that means that those law graduates who are taking the NextGen bar, so next year's round of 1Ls, are going to be tested on family law as well. Now, again, a major shift for the NextGen bar is this focus on practical skills, what NCBE is calling foundational skills. So this portion of the exam, I neglected to mention that the doctrinal concepts, they've said they anticipate that they'll allot somewhere between 40 to 50% of the exam, overall scoring. And then for foundational skills will be 50 to 60% of the exam. So at least half, potentially more, right? And these are things that were not tested previously, are not tested on the UBE. So again, these new graduates right behind you are going to be coming in having been tested on all of these skills, and you want to make sure that you have the same skills and knowledge that they've been tested on moving into law practice. So we've got legal research, writing, issue spotting and analysis, investigation and evaluation, client counseling and advising, negotiation and dispute resolution, and then finally client relationship and management. So you see legal research is bolded, not just because we're talking about it today, but also because legal research will be the most heavily tested skills area of this list of practical skills areas that will be tested. Now let me tell you why that's the case. Looking at this table, this is coming from the practice survey. Let me actually first say, you can see the highlighted text here. And again, this is coming from that practice survey. So legal professionals who were supervising newly licensed attorneys are telling us what they need from these new lawyers, right? So identify issues in a client matter, research case law, research statutory law, research secondary sources. They want newly licensed attorneys to walk in with strong skills in these areas. The ones highlighted are just those specific to legal research. So this is in part used for guidance for the exam developers and thinking about what to incorporate in the exam. Now, coming back to my mention of legal research being most heavily tested of those skills areas. So we can see that legal research sources and methods is listed. So it's listed as a knowledge area wherein skills are applied. So not only is it being tested as a skills area, it's also tested as a knowledge area. The only other skills area that this applies to is dispute resolution. So for legal research and dispute resolution, you're going to see those tested twice, again, as both skills and then as knowledge as well. And then it's just a larger percentage of weight is afforded to legal research than dispute resolution. But both of these areas will be significantly tested. So let's look at some of the questions that NCBE has highlighted thus far. These are coming from the sample questions available on their website. So we've got a hypothetical here. I'm not going to read it to you. But the call of the question says, which of the following legal topics are important for you to research before advising the client? Select two. So they're asking you what to research. They're considering this a research question. And then they're asking you to identify concepts that you're familiar with. These are doctrinal concepts that you're familiar with, right? But they're still considering this a skills question. But it's essentially a skills and a knowledge question, right? It's also testing your knowledge of these doctrinal concepts. Another multiple choice question. So we'll see a few different formats, right? So a couple multiple choice examples, right? We've got another hypothetical here. And then our call of the question is asking us to choose search terms that will be helpful to produce resources. So again, you are choosing search terms that you would put into a database that you would use during your research process. But again, you need to have that knowledge of doctrinal concepts, right? We can see that the answer choices, again, are doctrinal concepts. And so you need to have an understanding of those concepts in order to appropriately answer the question. Our next question is an integrated question. So this is a new type of question we haven't yet seen on the UBE. So essentially what they're doing with these integrated questions is combining skills components together. So we're testing legal research and writing and analysis together, or other skills areas on that list. But here's just one example, right? We're asking the examinee to advise on 2 sources that will be helpful in providing a controlling definition for the term habitable, which is at issue here. What do those answer choices look like? So this integrated question would call for you to provide short answers. Here's some sample correct answers. You could use a state statute, right? You could look to the definition section. You could use a high or appellate court decision within the applicable statute, and then the state regulatory or administrative source, if that also happens to provide a definition. So just an example of some of what those answer choices might look like. And again, you would write this out. This would be a short answer written rather than a multiple choice question. The next question again is an integrated question. So the prompt tells us that our research led us to a particular conclusion, and then a factual investigation also led to additional conclusions. And so then we're asked to list claims, and then for each claim, describe what is the appropriate remedy. If it's uncertain, describe the information you would need. So this is the sort of thing that you would be doing in your issue analysis, your first step in the research process. You'd want to identify what those claims are, and identify within the sources, the relevant sources that you found in your research process, what the remedy is. If you can't find it, what do you need? You found guidance on that in your research process. So another example of how research may be tested. So to recap those 4 questions that we just looked at, we've had, we're going to see these types of language, right? We've got which legal topics are important for you to research, which search terms will be helpful, advise on sources that are helpful, and then your legal research supports a finding, right? And then we are asked to go deeper into that issue analysis. So this is what we've seen thus far in terms of the sample questions that have been published. This is not to say that this is comprehensive. We will continue to see how this exam and plans for the exam evolves. So calling your attention back to that table we looked at already with the list of most commonly performed tasks by newly licensed attorneys. Again, I've highlighted those that are specific to legal research. So we've got identify issues in a client matter, including legal, factual, or evidentiary issues. We've got research case law, research statutory and constitutional law, and then finally research secondary sources. So these are the skills that firms, legal employers are expecting newly licensed attorneys to walk in with. And so these will be things that are tested on the NextGen bar. So, again, we've talked about the importance of staying abreast of changes in licensing processes just as an attorney, but also the fact that the folks right behind you are going to be tested on these skills, right? So, are you in a position to keep up with these same skills that the classes behind you are being tested on? And the answer to that is yes, right? If you think back to your LP research workshops that we did during your 1L year, we followed our 4-step process, and you can see that at right. We went through steps 1 through 4 respectively, and you can see we pulled this language from that table that we looked at on the previous slide. So at left, we've got identify issues in a client matter, research secondary authorities, research statutory and constitutional authorities, and then finally research case law. And if you look at right, that's exactly what we talked about in the workshops, right? So the language is a little bit different, issue analysis versus identify issues in a client matter. But it's the same thing, right? So that's our step 1 that we looked at in our workshops. 2, research secondary authorities. We looked at secondary sources as step 2. And then the same thing for steps 3 and 4, right? It's worded a little bit differently by the NCBE in their documentation, but it's the same thing that we've talked about, researching codified law, researching case law. So you should be well suited to still have a strong understanding of the skills that these employers are expecting you to have. So hopefully that is reassuring in some way. Fortunately, it worked out this way, and I was just very excited to see that the way that the NCBE has laid out these plans for the exam and the skills that they're testing for legal research align perfectly with what we've used for in the LP research workshops. So again, hopefully that provides some comfort for you, knowing that you are well prepared and can ensure that you're on the same page with those the classes behind you taking this new version of the exam. I also want to highlight the website once more, so you can come back to this website to gain more information, to look at sample questions, etc., etc. But this is definitely something to keep in mind. And then, of course, you can sign up for the subscription notifications as well. So if a state adds on and says we're gonna move forward with NCBE, the NCBE's NextGen bar exam, then you'll be notified of that change. And like I said, we'll continue to see more and more states sign up for this revised version of the exam. And again, we said Texas will be plans to administer this exam in July 2028. So that is all I have for you today. If you have questions, you can email me, ashley.arrington@ttu.edu, and explore the website. The final assessment is really straightforward. There are 7 questions on there. I think we've addressed all 7 of them in our lecture today. And if you have questions there, you can go back to the NCBE NextGen bar exam website and find answers there as well. But again, reach out if you have questions about the assessment, about anything else, or you just want to chat about NextGen. I've been really trying to stay abreast of this change. I've been presenting nationally on this change. So I'm very interested in the matter, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that as well. Thank you so much for your time, and I will look forward to reviewing your assessments or talking to you if you decide to reach out. Thanks so much, and that's all. Thanks again. Bye-bye.